speak up, please?
Just the question was on the sacrifice. Was that, just for my clarification, is there sort of were the commoners, common people to give like a weekly sacrifice versus a daily sacrifice? Were you able to hear that?
What was the regular daily sacrifice? That's why I gave you this, brother. Watson explains it beautifully here, but really it is the lamb in the morning and a lamb in the evening.
Okay.
That is the regular sacrifice. There were all kinds of other offerings and sacrifices that were commanded, but
It's translated the continual sacrifice.
the continual sacrifice.
It's the one that the official priesthood alone could offer continually.
Yes.
This is not the people's sacrifice, no.
And again, if the Jewish temple is rebuilt and the altar is fired up, they're not going to wait until Passover before a sacrifice takes place. They're going to immediately start the daily sacrifice. Okay. The Abomination of Desolation will be set up in the middle of the week. We've got two references in Daniel. The timeline beginning with the setting up of the abomination. Let's now look at Daniel chapter 12.
Question? Where does the setting up fit in with the 70th week, the start of the 70th week?
In the middle.
No, he says the setting up. You mean of the abomination?
The abomination's in the middle, no?
Yes, the setting up.
Where is the setting up?
The starting of the sacrifice.
Of the altar.
Is that correct?
Setting up.
Are you asking when did the sacrifice start?
Yes.
The answer to that is in Daniel chapter 8. It's actually 2,300 days until the sanctuary is cleansed, and that includes the last 3.5 years. So it begins sometime early in the first half of the week, shortly after the covenant is confirmed. Only a few months after that, the sacrifice begins, according to 2,300 day prophecy.
And what is so interesting when we talk about this is, did we answer you? What is so interesting as we're discussing this is activities that are happening right now in Israel. And I carry this interview that Irvin Baxter had with Rabbi Chaim Richmond a number of years ago, and had the privilege of also having an interview with this man in Jerusalem, the head of the Temple Institute, Chaim Richmond. Yes. These two?
I only got one. I only got the packet.
Which one do you need?
Sit right here. I need the 2-year-old one.
These two? Okay. No, I've done it. The interview, and I'll just cite a couple of questions here. This guy is head of the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. I first met him back in 1991 when the Temple Institute had been established. It was a little room in the Jewish quarter, and they had one golden vessel that they had recreated. It was the breastplate for the high priest that said, "Holy to the Lord." And I've met him on 3 different occasions on my trips to Israel, but just a fascinating guy that believes that it's his purpose in life to get this project going. I mean, he truly is a remarkable. He's got one focus in his life, and it's the rebuilding of the temple. And not only does he want to do it, he's doing everything that he can do, promoting everything that he can do. And but this interview, Amos Bender and I spent 2 hours with him back in 2003, and it was just a fascinating. And he loves to talk to Christians. In fact, he's got a doctorate in New Testament. The head of the Temple Institute has a doctorate in New Testament studies? Is that interesting or what? Well, the question, do you have priests right now that once they have experienced purification would be qualified to minister in the temple? Yes. In fact, there is a settlement east of Jerusalem, right overlooking the old ancient city of Jericho. It's called Mitzpah Jericho. It is a settlement in the West Bank that's strictly devoted to the training of priests. 1,200 priests live in this settlement. If anybody would like to get my email address, I would love to send you some video clips of activities there at Mitzpah Jericho. In fact, I have an Israeli friend. I gave him a mission recently. I said, I want you to go over there and check out what they're doing in there. But interesting group. But the purpose of the settlement is to train priests for a third Jewish temple. Well, on one of the occasions that I met Chaim Richmond, we were there, and as we were there, a whole group of young little Jewish boys came through. And they were probably 8 or 10 years old. They all looked like they were cut out of the same mold. All had the same keyboard. All these little kids. He stopped me. He said, I want to tell you about these young boys. These young boys all have the last name of Cohen, which is the Hebrew word for priest. And they're being introduced today for the first time that they're going to serve in a third rebuilt temple. I mean, they're training the young kids. And to go in the old city, the Jewish quarter of the old city, and now that it's an expansive temple institute where you can go and actually sit and listen to the Levites practicing worship songs that are going to be in a third temple. I heard it with my own ears. I mean, they've got their harps and their instruments and the best musicians in the world. Well, do you have priests right now that would be qualified? He says yes. But he goes on and he says, but we have to understand that much change has to take place in order for this to come about, unless you're talking about a miracle, he says, which can always happen. But he says you're talking about a situation where Jewish rights to the Temple Mount are being totally denied. God is moving in the hearts of many, many people, and they're testing people to see if they're on the side of Israel and Jerusalem or not. He says, my goal is to try to create an understanding between Christians and Jews. Now listen to this. His goal is to try to create an understanding between Christians and Jews as much as possible toward the sanctification of the name of God, and the understanding that what we have in common is much greater than what we have in differences. I believe we have to unite together in order to bring about the redemption and the restoration of the kingdom of God. Wow! I mean, for a guy that's head of the Temple Institute to make this statement is amazing. Well, question. If there were a breakthrough on the Jerusalem situation and somehow the temple could be rebuilt, how soon would you have a red heifer ready to be offered for purification of the priests and for the Temple Mount area? It would probably be under 5 years. And then he makes this statement, maybe more like 3.5 years. Well, while we're on the subject, maybe just 3.5 years. Well, they've butchered this red heifer. They've sacrificed this red heifer. And now a recent interview with Chaim Richmond says that's no longer a problem. We've got the ashes. It's ready to go for the cleansing of the stones in the Temple Mount because of all the bloodshed on the Temple Mount. Are the architectural plans for the third temple prepared yet? Yes, they've been ready for some time. You can go online and see the details of the blueprints online. Well, this question, are there people in Israel that feel the Messiah will appear very quickly now? Rabbi, whoever has eyes to see knows the things that we have been privileged to witness in recent years on a global scale in this region, in Europe, in Russia. They are all remarkable signs of a process that we believe God is using and putting into motion to bring about his plan for humanity. And we agree with that. Certainly there are those of us who feel more strongly than ever that the appearance of Messiah is near. I would go further to tell you emphatically that although there are those of us who are upset about the direction of things in Israel, that this is not a cause for despondency or depression. On the contrary, the fact that things are going the way that they're going here in Israel with this government, with the leadership, with the false peace, with the treachery, and with the terrorism, is nothing but another indication of the fact that God in his great mercy is bringing about that which he from the beginning had in mind for his people and for the world. We feel that we're blessed to be living in this time. Perhaps this is more of a pivotal generation than has ever existed, and we feel that we are in fact seeing things that only our fathers dreamed of, and we're blessed to see the culmination of these things, that we will be blessed to see the culmination of these things. Question: how will the Jewish people recognize their Messiah when he does appear? What will be the criteria for which they will know for sure who this man is? Rabbi. Messiah is a global figure whose task is to unite all humanity in the recognition and reality of the one true God, and to unite the hearts of all men in that service. The interesting point is that when he comes, I assure you that both you and I will agree that it is him. There will be absolutely no question about that whatsoever. You won't need to hear it on the radio or see it on cable news network. It is something that we will know. It will be quite clear to everyone that it is in fact he. I truly believe, again, in our terms of being united, that when he arrives, there will be not any arguing whatsoever about his identity, and his identity will be acceptable to all of us. Most do not feel the divine purpose of life, nor do they have intimate bond with the Creator. The Messiah is going to reinstall that connection between every person and the one true God, and that's no small matter. I had another friend that interviewed the rabbi and opened up Zechariah 12 and says, "Tell me, Rabbi, they will look upon me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn." Rabbi, what does this mean to you? He was speechless. He couldn't say anything. He said, well, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. But the fact of the matter is, the efforts toward a rebuilding of a literal third temple in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount is ongoing, and more Orthodox Jews are ascending the Temple Mount. They're getting up there. There's being articles written about possible compromise situations, maybe having certain days that Jews can go on the Temple Mount, certain days that Arabs can go, much like they do at Abraham's tomb. They have a wall right down the middle. The Arabs come on one side and the Jews come on the other. And Abraham's tombstone, half of it juts out on one side and half of it juts out on the other side. There's a wall there, but it's a compromise agreement. And we have some reason to believe from Revelation chapter 11 that there's going to be a similar compromise. Psalm end, it says. Go and measure the temple of God, but don't measure everything. Leave out the court of the Gentiles. Leave out the outer court, for that's been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread underfoot the holy city. How many months? 42 months. But the fact of the matter is, efforts are being made towards the rebuilding of the temple. But in recent time, and look at your notes here, the one with the picture of the altar. This just happened to appear not too long ago in Art Sheva, Israel National News website. Temple Institute to build sacrificial altar on Tisha B'Av. And they built the altar. The altar has been built, and this group out in Mitzpah, Jericho, where all these priests are, That's who built it. They went to the bottom of the Dead Sea and they got stones that had never been touched by a man's hand, that had washed down the Jordan River. You know, these stones come rolling down the Jordan River into the Dead Sea. And they brought those up and they rebuilt the altar. It's a portable structure that could be moved to the Temple Mount today if they came to an agreement. It's ready to go. And I'm saying that to say this. Sometimes we think, well, the temple has to be rebuilt before all these sacrifices can start up, before the daily sacrifice. No. And if we read in Ezra, it says when the people returned, before the foundation of the temple was laid, they began offering sacrifice on the altar. And this is something, if they would come to an agreement, wow. The trigger, I'm not saying that's the day the Antichrist would be set up, or Abomination would be set up, but the daily sacrifice could be started right away. And they're planning on it, and they're talking about it, and they're talking about the compromise on the Temple Mount, building a synagogue on the Temple Mount. They're talking about having a place where Jews can go and pray. And the Orthodox group in Israel is growing. Now 750,000 Jews are fully Orthodox. That means nothing to us, but the Orthodox movement in Israel is growing. And they've been praying for years. Next year in Jerusalem, the prayers concerning the Temple Mount are part of the daily prayer for Orthodox Jews. And they're going to do it, according to the passage of Scripture. Yes.
Isn't that a change from they don't believe that they should be there right now? They see the Jews, they don't believe that they should be in Israel. That's something that's given.
Yeah, there are sects that believe we shouldn't even go up on the Temple Mount. Others will go. Some say, well, we're going to wait for Messiah to come, then we're going back to Israel. Because Messiah is going to rebuild the temple. Well, I'm saying all that to say this. We're living in a very interesting time because we're seeing, reading in the newspaper and reading online, that, wow, these things could be put into motion very, very quickly. And when I saw that altar on my last visit to Israel, I went to Revelation chapter 11. Go and measure the temple, it says, and the altar. You know, I underlined the altar and I put a little note in my Bible. That's been fulfilled. Because they built the altar. Yes, brother.
Just a curious question. So, what the rabbi says here about the Messiah, that's not a good thing.
No, I'm not promoting what he's saying.
Okay, because what he's actually saying here is what I think needs them to make a compromise with the Antichrist.
For sure.
It's what's going to allow
Yes.
them, because they're having this messianic idealism. Because in their mind, in the Jewish mind right now, in a lot of ways, they're looking for consciousness and
Yes,
enlightenment.
for sure.
So, okay.
But Messiah is part of their conversation. That's interesting. In fact, there was a banner on the Jerusalem Post I sent it to some of you guys a few weeks ago. Messiah is in Tel Aviv. You want to take a trip and meet him? No. But that was in the banner. Messiah is in Tel Aviv. And the war of Gog and Magog is coming very soon. And this government in Israel, they wrote, I mean, this was a banner that was moving on the front page of the Jerusalem Post, that this government, Netanyahu government, will be the last government in Israel before Messiah. It was interesting. Yes?
I just want to clarify on that point, because that was my question about Rabbi Richmond's comments about Messiah and how everybody will know, will recognize, and
Right.
don't worry about it. The things he's saying there are true of the true Messiah. But that's after this Antichrist, this deceiver. So are we saying that we believe that that Israel is going to make this agreement with this false person who they're going to accept for this peace, believing that's the Messiah, because, see what I mean? Because they don't have a revelation of Jesus. And then that person in the deep betrayal and so on, and then eventually Jesus, the true Messiah. waiting for this Messiah, and they're kind of right about what he's going to do, but they're going to identify someone else believing he's the Messiah.
They're kind of looking, I think, more of a political figure that will be raised up in their own ranks.
And that's the
And-
man of, the man of desolation.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. No.
No.
Back to the timeline. We'll discuss that. False Messiah. There's going to be many false messiahs.
Are you saying, Vicky, that are you equating the idea of the temple coming, that they think that the Messiah is coming to the temple right then?
Yes.
Okay, that's where I thought the problem was. I don't think that we're saying that.
And you don't think that these Temple Institute Orthodox Jews are believing?
Well, they're looking for a Messiah right now,
Yes, they are.
but I mean, I don't think that what we're trying to establish would be that when the temple is actually rebuilt, and or the daily sacrifice started, cornerstone set, whatever it is that you want, when that comes, we're not saying that the Messiah would immediately show up that they're looking for, nor that the Antichrist is pretending to be that person.
Okay.
The Antichrist is an outside political figure who makes an alliance with these other countries, and then he'll end up taking and coming down, and he'll start a war and take Jerusalem, and that's what we're saying.
That clarifies the picture.
Okay, let's get back to the timeline. Let's look in Daniel chapter 12. Well, the timeline that I want to draw out today is the 3.5 years that starts with the Abomination of Desolation being set up. It ends with the day of the Lord, the resurrection of the dead, and the destruction of the Antichrist.
Here's my question: was you said he abolishes the daily sacrifice somewhere in the middle?
That's right.
So it starts out abomination of desolation, and then he abolishes the sacrifice somewhere in the middle of this timeline.
No, in fact, that's what we're getting to right now.
I didn't know where to get there. I just wanted to ask.
So listen now in Daniel chapter 12. The question is asked. All right, let's look at let's start in verse 1, Daniel 12. Now at that time Michael, the great prince, who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. Michael's just kind of been sitting down over there. Now God's gonna say, okay, up, got a project for you. Go throw this devil out of heaven. And really, the engaging of Satan in the heavenlies, Michael engaging, and the throwing of Satan out of heaven onto the earth, possessing it's going to be an incarnation, the Word becoming flesh kind of thing that happened with Jesus, will become indwelt by Satan, is the way I understand it. Now, so Michael will arise, this prince that stands guard over the sons of your people, and there will be a time of distress, such as had never occurred since there was a nation until that time, and at that time your people, everyone who is written in the book, will be rescued. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. So it's going to start with Michael engaging the devil, throwing him out of heaven, a time of trouble, ending with the resurrection. And, of course, ending with the defeat of Antichrist at the day of the Lord when the resurrection takes place. Okay. look in verse 4. But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words, seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others were standing, one on this bank of the river, and the other on that bank of the river. And one said to the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? I think NIV says, how long will it be till the end of these astonishing things that you're telling us about? This time of trouble, how long is this going to last? These wonders. Anybody else have another translation besides wonders? Astonishing things, NIV. Extraordinary things. These things that you've just described. How long is this going to last? Until the end. When are these things going to come to the end? And I heard the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, as he raised his right hand and his left hand towards heaven, and swore by him who lives forever that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. If we had a calculator, we could figure that one out. But this quoted in by John in Revelation chapter 12, we're talking about that 3.5-year period of time. Time, times, and half a time. And as soon as they finish shattering the power of the holy people, all these events will be completed. So the time of Jacob's trouble, where the power of the holy people will be shattered. I mean, the purpose of the time of Jacob's trouble, the purifying of the sons of Levi, this trouble is going to bring all Israel to repentance. But as for me, Daniel says in verse 8, I could not understand, so I said, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these events? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for these are concealed and sealed up until the end time. Many will be purged, purified, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand. But the masculine, they're going to understand. Those who have insight, the masculine, will understand. And then he throws in this in conclusion. At the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. So, the abomination of desolation is set up and the daily sacrifice, that's both happens at the same time, the way I understand it here. And then count 1,290 days. The timeline going a little bit further than 3.5 years. There's a lot of discussion about what is this extra 30 days? How blessed is he who keeps waiting until 1,335 days. And there's different viewpoints on that. Some, well, maybe it's going to be the consecration of the sanctuary at that time. Maybe the setting up of the thrones. Maybe the setting up of the government. It could be the restoration of events going into the millennium. Possibly an award ceremony where the rewards are going to be given out. Who knows what really it's speaking of going in past that 3.5 years. But there is going to be points. But it starts here. It's going to end with the resurrection, and it's going to end with moving into the 1,000-year reign, as I understand it. Any comments on that, Brian?
Oh, no. I'm tracking
Reggie?
with you too.
Okay. Yes.